we got a ton of stable coins. And then, yeah, I mean, 38 million, 35 million, 19 million, got a ton of wrap teeth, a ton of hex, of course. We kind of expected that. The wrap BTC, like $10 million in WBTC. That's, that is by far leading the of the copies that are available as far as liquidity on the other side of actual coins, leading it. And then Uni, I don't know what the number was before, but $1 million of Uni recently, maybe because of the farms. Link, $500,000. Is there anything on here that's that you're like, whoa, you didn't expect, or is it good or bad sign?
I mean, there's some I wouldn't have guessed, but like now we kind of have like clear reasons. So like if you had asked me about rep BTC, would there have been something intuitive that maybe would have thought them on the list? No. But then you see the farms, and there's some weird games. This is one of those things where like I would have pushed back because it just wouldn't sit well in my monkey brain. If you go back when RH is like, hey, like it's the same ticker symbols, why would you trade them here when you could trade them here? Like in my head, I still like you have that like rejection of the truth where I'm like, no, my ticker symbols are a real thing. They're where I put them. Like, no, this is mine, right? Like, no, that's the fake version, right? Like even in the community, like we say the copies, right? Like that's such a habit, and you trade them both, right? And so like when you see wrap BTC, like I have this like intuitive, like emotional response to be like, no, the new wrap version isn't that thing. That doesn't make sense. And then you're like, ticker symbol is the ticker symbol. They move around the same way. And I think sometimes we just get down to like, some of us again can kind of be a little too idealistic or too like over complication, wanting there to be more magic when it's like, it's a ticker symbol. It moves around. People want to speculate, play the game. The game's here. The game's cheaper to play. And all the characters are still here. So it makes sense. It's something that I would have again pushed back before seeing it, but seeing it play out so well, it's another one of those things where you got to be like, all right, well, RH was right on that one. All right, we'll put him another point up there. So that one again wouldn't have jumped out at me. The one I think that answers more of the question is Link. Those guys have always been kind of confrontational toward the project and kind of snotty toward RH. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the rationale behind it being used and up there. So that's one I wouldn't have thought intuitively, but again, maybe that's actually the reason, right? Like those guys, that's kind of a negative community. Maybe we give them a little tip of the hat and you start to kind of dampen some of the heat you see from some of those select communities. So that's an interesting one, but those would be the two to me.
Well, if you look at if you look at stable coins plus hex, if we remove those and we just look at the coins that even remove the wrap ones for a moment, remove the wrap ones. Even though you can say, okay, why is there $10 million for wrap BTC other than to farm it? Is there any other reason to be on there other than faster, cheaper transactions on the network with it? Okay, maybe there's utility. I feel like it's a little early for utility for a lot of this stuff, but maybe.
Agreed.
But the Uni, the Link, can you see this in 6 weeks, 2-3 months from now? A lot of these numbers, people coming to the farms, like, will that be if that is RH's vision of having millions of dollars worth of bridged over Pepe and Link and Uni and all these other Sheeb and all this stuff. Do you think it's more likely in the coming weeks or months that we see this stay around the same, or more people bridge more? Like, is it just a matter of him, or just a matter of just putting up the farms to get people to come over? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'd like to see like that, like keep evolving through, right? Like when you look at marketing, I think it's like they have to see your logo 3 times before they pay attention, or before there's like a little tear bump in there, like when they've seen repetitive symbolism or wording where they start to give it some level of trust, right? So if you say like Chainlink, all right? So let's say the Link community, those guys there, the Link Marines, I think is what their little deal is. They see the farm. Maybe they care about the farm. Let's say they do use the farm. Cool. Everything rocks. Good according to plan. The ones that don't, go on about their day. Okay. Well, then maybe it's the Pepe thing. Like they hear about Pepe and they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, that thing's on PulseChain too. They're doing that same farm thing. All right. They go on about their day. And then they hear the SHIB and they're like, okay, hold on. Like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? Right. Like, how do I move through here? So I think some of the cycling here not only hits those communities, but you're almost like these interesting ways of like trying to get in front of the same person in multiple ways, right? Like if you take someone who's like, say, heavy in Link, and you just keep trying to hammer, hey, come use the farm, come use the farm, come use the farm, they're just going to they'll dig their heels in, right? But if you sort of just kind of drop in the seed in a few different places, then you start to have, like, there's a lot of this, again, like basic marketing and psychology that'll start to make those things be like retention, right? Or stickiness. You'll start to see more like more conversion into using the chain. So I think that, like, kind of cycling through the farms, you get that group that's like we talked about. There was a substantial minority that saw PulseX differently than Pulse, because they were like, no, I want to come play the farm game and do staking. So you get those guys, they just keep seeing new farms. So that audience that just likes farms regardless of tokens, they come and play. And then if you sit there and hit the people who don't necessarily like farms but are holders of these tokens, you can start to try to get that pulse chain in front of them over and over and over, and eventually they start to move in and feel more comfortable.
Do you think the key for the utility part too, because it is, cheaper, maybe faster to transact, all that, trusting the bridge, the bridge, we hope it's been the most audited, secure thing, all that, we millions, $140 million almost trust the bridge. So that seems to be okay. Do you think that's the biggest part too, is just if you're confident the bridge works fine, your money's safe. And if you want to do transactions or otherwise, I mean, it is cheaper to transact on there if you have the wrap version, or if you have the bridged over version of stuff. Can you see people actually eventually using it as utility? Like maybe if they used to do it with Matic instead of doing it with Matic or something else, they use PulseChain for it because there's more opportunities they can use their coins for over on our network, especially when more products are coming online.
So I think there's two things you can kind of like deduce from there a bit. So one is with the bridge. You need a bridge like this that they'll use refer to as like lock and mint or burn and mint, like lock and mint. So the reason you need a bridge like this, especially in the beginning, to sort of like bootstrap liquidity on the network is, okay, so if you, okay, let's say that I'm on ETH and you're on PulseChain, right? And you're like, okay, I say, all right, Max, hey, here's $1,000. I want $1,000 of Pulse, right? And I buy it from you. Okay. There's the same amount of value on PulseChain. The only difference is who owns it, right? Nothing's changed, right? Okay, but if I take $1,000 of ETH and then I move it over through the bridge, now there's an extra $1,000 worth of value on PulseChain. So you need like some like centralized exchanges or lock and mint style bridges. There's a few different ways, but like you need a style of bridge like this to actually move the value over. So like if you do like cross-chain swaps, that's helpful for a user. I'll touch on that in just a second, but it doesn't change the value on PulseChain. Like again, it can through like buying mechanics like a little bit there, but essentially, if you swap $1,000 in Matic for $1,000 in Pulse, it changes for the participants, but the networks are the exact same amount of value. So this is about bridging that value to actually on the chain. That's one of the differences on something like this. And then if you do something where it's a cross-chain swap or these other types of onboarding, those can be easier for a user because you don't have the exposure to that wrapped contract, essentially the bridge exposure. So as an individual user, you can use that. Again, it kind of depends on the goal. And then if you do still need to use a bridge like this, you want to use the official bridge, you lose exposure as soon as you swap into something else. So if I wrap ETH, come over, and then I buy PHEX or whatever it is you want to buy. Okay, well now I'm not exposed to the bridge anymore. Like what happens to that collateral now doesn't affect me. So you can use the official bridge and then move into non-wrapped assets from it. And now you don't have that same exposure. But again, it's important for the network to be able to add value, move actual like economic mass there. And then the second one, you can, right? Like people do things in interesting ways. So if you get to bring that value over, then you can essentially use this almost like a layer 2. Like it's not how it technically is, but it's in a pragmatic version. It can be used like a layer 2 where it's like, here's the asset. It's more simple for me, you, and 100 people to speculate and play the Pepe game over here. And then I'm like, okay, now I actually want to not just cash out of Pepe, but I want to cash out, bring it back to ETH, and then go through whatever exchange or whatever makes sense for you. So there's sort of it's a scaling solution for it. There's again, just there's the network effect. Like there's a lot of ways that it can like pragmatic, like more of in a pragmatic way, not in a technical way, be used from different participants.
Yeah, I mean, spot on the point. That's a really good point too you made about the bridging over coins increase networks value, where cross-chain swaps or just change of participants. Something I don't hear people talk about a lot, and it's very Good nuanced point.
Let me give a quick analogy on that too, because I think that's a good point as well. So if you imagine there's a poker, this is an easy way to me. There's a poker table, right? And there's 5 players sitting here playing, right? Okay, if I go sit next to Max and I say, Max, here's $1,000, give me $1,000 worth of chips. The chips just slide over. Same amount of money is on the poker table, right? To get more money on the table, I have to use a bridge, or in this case, like the cage. So if I go over to the casino and say, hey, here's $1,000, give me $1,000 worth of chips, and now I walk over and sit next to you, now there's $1,000 more on the table. Like that's the analogy. That I think that makes it clear. But like that's the difference in those two different like bridging mechanics. If I do a cross-chain swap, same amount of chips are on the table, right? It doesn't help the network necessarily. But using something that's like lock and mint, I brought new value onto the table.